this way. Okay, so here we were. What's the current research on health optimization? So we'll go through just a few of them because there's obviously lots. And again, you can ask me questions after, but then also if any of you were to actually book a health checkup with me, then you get all of it. You get all the different tweaks and all the different health upgrades, so you can learn more. So we won't do all of it today because it's just too much. So what we want to do, we talked about it before, is we run into a problem if things start to sludge up, if we have more sick and old cells than healthy new cells, if we don't have enough of the right new building blocks to make it grow, and if things are starting to not work that well. So what do we do day to day? Here, so we'll start with metabolism and the right fuel. Like I said before, if we have too much sugar, then our body starts to create too many free radicals. It starts to get rusty, lots of problems. So we want to give it the right fuel so it can drive really well, like this car, or that you can run, do whatever you feel like doing at optimal performance with minimal wear and tear. And what does that look like? So this is a generally healthy plate. I will not go into much detail in all the different sections. So you obviously want to nourish your cells with lots of different vegetables, so you get all the different vitamins, minerals, fiber for your gut microbiome. And at a good balance, so don't just eat one food. Like I said before, it always is about the balance. So you want to eat the rainbow. You want to have high fiber, so lots of different vegetables, nuts and seeds, things like that to support your gut microbiome, unless you have a problem with your gut. So if you actually have a health condition like digestive problem, then you might temporarily have to not eat a high fiber diet. And that's where functional medicine comes in. So then you would find out what you should temporarily avoid until everything is running smoothly again. But as a generally healthy person that just wants to upgrade their health, this is what we'll do. You want to have some high quality protein and fats, because that's what our body is made out of, and we need it to run properly. So we need to have a good balance, omega-3s to 6s, so we're not inflamed again. And then another one, just as an example that people often get wrong, it's called lysine-arginine balance. They're both parts of protein that are really important for us. However, if we have too much arginine compared to lysine, then our body gets more prone to make more replicate a virus inside us, for example. And we don't want that, not just now with the current situation, but even other ones, for cold sore viruses, all these different viruses out there that we don't want to take over inside our body. And if we keep the balance with arginine and lysine on a good balance, the body is more able to fight it. So we want both. Lysine is mainly found in animal products. Arginine is mainly found in plant-based protein. But there's also, if someone's a vegan, there's also always ways around it. But that's just a general recommendation. Another thing that you want to do, and we'll go into that in more detail, is cyclical ketosis with carb loading. If you are a woman and you still have a monthly cycle, then according to your monthly cycle, and we'll go into that a bit more in depth. You want to also include some intermittent fasting, circadian eating. We'll go into detail with those. Hydration, obviously you want to make sure you get enough water inside you. Also, like I said before, food intolerances are really big and they're not being recognized enough, so they cause a lot of trouble. So even though something might be healthy, like eggs, it might not be good for someone else if they're intolerant and they are creating an immune response towards it. So you obviously want to avoid foods that you are intolerant to if you have any intolerances. And you want to avoid overeating, because remember that picture before with the big belly, with the insulin resistance, where the brain doesn't respond to insulin, to that hormone anymore. If we overeat, if we eat too many calories, more than the body needs, it actually makes something called palmitic acid, which blocks our brain, our hypothalamus, right away and says, even though there's not maybe carbs, it's just too much food, and tells the brain, I'm now not insulin sensitive anymore. And then your body goes into that vicious cycle of inflammation, more belly fat. So avoid overeating, try and eat until, it's like an old Ayurvedic thing, I believe, but it seems to be working from new science as well. Eat until about 3/4 full, and then wait for 15-20 minutes and see if you're still really hungry or if you were just peckish. And that should help you not to overeat and make your brain more sensitive to hormones, insulin. And again, all of this can be modified if someone has an actual health condition. They need to modify certain things depending on their genetics, depending on also their preferences, if someone's a vegan or vegetarian or other preferences. All of this can and must be modified so it then turns into a really nourishing, balanced plate. So like I said before, one of the things we'll talk about is carb intake and ketosis. So our goal is to have a steady blood sugar where we don't have the blood sugar spikes like we talked about before that make us rust inside and make us hangry, but that are really stable. And then you don't get these periods where you're so hungry that you have to go and run for food. With periods in ketosis, and that's fat burning mode. No spikes, no damage. So what is this ketosis? A lot of you might know it. Again, I don't see any faces, so I'm not sure if you are aware what ketosis is or not, but I'm assuming most people have at least heard a little bit about it now. It's kind of like another craze. It can be done wrong as well, but if it's done right, it is really has shown a lot of great potential. It's anti-inflammatory. It's potentially anti-cancer. It supports brain and gut health. It supports something called autophagy, which is cleaning up of our cells. So if there's a damaged old cell, it helps to get rid of that. Also, when the body's in ketosis, fat burning mode, it creates less free radicals. Remember these little mitochondria, the energy production in our cells, it creates less of that smoke when it's being burning ketones rather than sugar. So there's lots of great things if it's done right, but only when it's done in intermittently. So we'll get to that in a second, how often to do it and how to do it right. So how do we get into a ketosis, into a ketogenic state? That the body actually starts to burn fat for fuel rather than sugar. And that's on a roughly is to drop your carb intake. That includes any healthy carbs as well. That includes fruit, and that includes potatoes and sweet potatoes and quinoa, all these things, below 50 grams a day, roughly. If you're exercising a lot at high intensities, you might actually get away with a little more and still stay in a ketogenic state. So it's good to test sometimes, and we'll get into how to test in a second. Another way to get into a ketogenic state is to be in fasting. So if you're, let's say, you don't eat for a day or for at least overnight, then your body doesn't have any carbs and no protein. So then it has to also start to burn stored fat for fuel. Exercising, like I said, if you exercise at higher intensity, the body burns through any other fuel quicker, and then it has to start to burn the fat for fuel. And what they found is that just for normal, healthy people, they want to optimize health, a goal range of 0.5 to 3 milligrams per deciliter in a blood test is the goal range. Even better if someone really wants to kickstart wants to get rid of that belly fat, wants to feel better, get their brain functioning better, 1.5 to 3. Anything above that is more, you need to be supervised. Or I would recommend you being supervised is for people that have conditions like a cancer or something like that, where it really needs to put temporarily, maybe even go a lot higher in the ketosis. How do you test it? I don't know if I have an image later. You want to use these they're little pricks for your finger. I don't know if you can see me, but I think you can. You just have this tiny little needle, doesn't hurt, and then squeeze a little bit of blood out, and then you have this little machine, and it measures your blood ketones. And that's actually a lot more accurate than any of the urine sticks that people use, because what the urine sticks measure, it's a different kind of ketone that when your body is really good at using ketones, it doesn't have much of it left. So you might be really low on your urine results, but actually your body is in the perfect golden range for ketones. So blood is always the golden standard. Same with breath. You actually want to use blood. That's how you measure whether you're in the right state, even though it's maybe a little bit less convenient. And so the next thing is that cyclical ketosis. That's where that's the newest research, and I really want to hone into that because, and I don't know how familiar you are with ketosis. Like I said, when this whole thing started, and there's all these research papers out about how anti-inflammatory it is, how it might help potentially prevent cancer, it's good for your brain, Alzheimer's, your gut, all of these things. All the people all of a sudden they only heard keto, and including functional medicine practitioners and me, we all just, not that much was out about it yet 5-7 years ago when it all started with the ketosis in the research industry. And so we just thought, okay, well, we just need to take the carbs out, get into ketosis, the more the better, no matter what kind of fat we're burning. The more fat we have, the better, eat the better. And that worked for most people really well in the beginning because their body just got shocked into not having any sugars and burning fats. And people lost tons of weight, felt really slim, their brain switched on, they didn't have cravings anymore. Perfect. However, after a while, people started to realize that all of a sudden they were starting to have hormone issues, especially women, or they were starting to have menstrual cycle problems, or they were starting to have a little layer of belly fat and they just couldn't move it, or their weight loss stalled, things like that, or they just started to get tired, hair loss, things like that. And then there's a lot more research was being done over the past years why this was and what the actual golden range is. And they're still not 100% sure about what it looks like now. Let me see. Oh, wait, we'll go to this in a second. Here. Okay. So if you're a man or a woman without a cycle, so post-menopause, or you're on some kind of pill that doesn't give you a cycle, you can have a weekly cycle of, if you want to add ketosis, it's obviously optional, but if you want to reap some of the health benefits of being in a ketosis sometimes, you want to include it no more than 5 or 6 days a week, roughly. And then have 1 or 2 days at least where you have a bit more carbs. Again, you can try and stay in a low carb state, so not go overboard and eat all the junk food in the world. But you can have some carbs and they're not bad for you. You actually need some to support your hormones, to support your joints, to support your connective tissue, lots of things that are needed. Also that your metabolism doesn't stall, your thyroid doesn't stall. So that's just for men and women without a cycle, is fairly straightforward. If they want to incorporate ketosis, up to 5-6 days a week, you can go into ketosis, and then 1 to 2 days a week, you have to get out of it. And obviously you can choose to eat some shitty carbs. You also want to cheat sometimes, but the better is to have healthy carbs like potatoes, sweet potatoes, berries, but you could also have your favorite pizza sometimes, or have if you're not intolerant to gluten. It really depends. The other thing though, wait, where are we here? Women with a cycle, that's a little bit more complicated. And because we have this normally, you can see this here, I think, we have this monthly cycle of hormones. And I know that most people today are women that are joining. So I am hoping that most of you are women with your cycle, so that it makes sense for you and it's interesting. We'll go into that just a little bit more now. So if you are a woman in your reproductive years and you have a cycle, then this one here is the orange, is the estrogen, and it usually, all your hormones are quite low in the beginning of your cycle, with day 1 being your first day of your period. That's where we start. And then you have an estrogen spike, normally if everything's healthy, just before your ovulation. And then in the second phase, your progesterone should come up. Now, where it most commonly goes wrong is that there's not enough progesterone in that second phase and too much estrogen in relation. And I'm just exaggerating that a little bit. It's usually just minutely, but if that balance is a little bit off, then we run into problems. For example, into PMS, or into spotting, or into anxiety, or the thyroid starts to not work as well. So the metabolism starts to stall. Or even long-term down the line, more problematic things with estrogen dominance, like endometriosis or breast cancers down the line. So we really want to make sure that we have enough progesterone here and not too much estrogen here. this is for the majority of people. There are also some women that don't have enough hormones at all, or for them it's different, but I'm just talking about the majority here. For most people most women that I see, this is the most common issue. Now, what research has shown, and I've spent a lot of time digging through research papers to try and find what it was, why would women run into these trouble when they were on keto and fasting and doing all these things that were meant to be so good for us, is that when the same enzyme that creates ketones in our body also creates estrogen. So now when we're constantly in a ketosis, through fasting too much, through not eating enough carbs nonstop, then we're also potentially making too much estrogen. And on the contrary, our body, our thyroid needs a little bit of carbs to make thyroid hormones, and that thyroid is important to make progesterone. So it's all linked. And so in that part of the cycle, that second phase, we actually want to make sure that we're not in a ketogenic state for the majority of the day. Of course, if you're going fairly low carb and you have a little bit of carbs throughout the day, and then during the night when you're fasting, you might go into a light ketosis, that's absolutely fine. I'm talking about being really restrictive with carbs, really fasting intensely during that phase. It will likely throw off your hormones, and that won't be nice for you. The other thing is, just before your ovulation, you also want to stay away from really intense fasting regimens or really intense ketosis, because again, if your body is really, if your body's thinking it's starving, it might not make the right hormones to ovulate, because it thinks it's running away from a tiger, and it's not safe to ovulate and put an egg out there and make a baby. That's how we evolved. Even for the women that don't want to have babies, that's basically how our system works. So just before ovulation, roughly day 12 to 14, you want to just not be so strict with yourself. Don't do extreme fasting. Don't do extreme keto. Treat yourself a little more. Have some cheats. Have your favorite foods. And then again, in the second phase of your cycle, at minimum around day 18 to day 24, roughly, you want to make sure you have some carbs. I would say 2 portions a day, roughly. Let's say a portion of potatoes or whatever you like, or sweet potato fries if you like that, not too often, and some berries or banana or something like that. 2 portions at least, so that you get over that 50 grams of carbs a day, and still and support your hormones without going crazy overboard with carbs that do all the other problems that we talked about before. So I hope this makes sense. We will go, you can ask questions on that if you have them, and I'll go through the emails at the end. And then also we'll do a more hormone specific workshop in 10 days. I'll just try, I'm aware that we're taking time. So we'll just go through the other things that I missed out on here before. The other 2 things that are really important for health optimization that a lot of people have spoken about now is something called intermittent fasting. And again, a lot of you might be familiar with this concept. And there's also, again, people doing it in a very extreme way now, where they eat only 1 meal a day, or they have 1 day a week or 2 days a week where they don't eat at all. Again, what they found is, for women, especially for men as well, but for women a lot more, our hormones are a lot more sensitive. If we extend our daily fast until much past noon, our body actually thinks it's running away from a tiger, and it messes this whole cortisol curve, that stress hormone daily curve. And then we can't sleep at night. And then the next day we are craving food, and then it's a completely vicious cycle. So actually we don't want to overdo it as a woman, unless we have a real health condition and we temporarily need to fast because of a different thing. But for just general health optimization, try and start with your meal at brunch or lunchtime. Don't wait until later. And even just restricting your fasting, your eating window to, let's say, a 12-hour window is actually a big improvement for a lot of people. A lot of people, they get up at night and have a snack, or they get up first thing in the morning and then they eat, and they just eat all day. So actually just restricting that and saying, okay, I finish my dinner at 6 p.m. and I don't eat until I wake up and get up in the morning and start eating at 7, that's already, that 12-hour window is actually already intermittent fasting. So when you hear about intermittent fasting benefits, that's already maybe enough for you. So you don't have to start to restrict yourself all the time. However, if you are healthy and your adrenal glands are healthy, you're not overly stressed, then maybe you can start experimenting with pushing your first meal back a little and maybe taking your last meal further forward a little bit. But again, you don't want to start eating later than around noon. What has been found is if you have this intermittent fasting window, similar to the ketosis, because they actually go hand in hand with each other, it upregulates, I've just used a different word here, something called sirtuins, and it reduces mTOR. What these do, both of them basically increase that cellular cleanup. You can think of it like if you have visitors or people in the house or kids running around in the living room, it's really difficult to clean up. So the best thing is to bring them, throw them all out for a moment, say go into the garden, on the street, wherever, into a different room so I can tidy everything up. Same thing happens in the body. When there is constant food, it can't do any cleaning up. So you need to fast for a certain period of time so the body can do its own cleaning up, that autophagy, apoptosis, just getting rid of old cells, mutated cells. We always have them, all of us. It's just about getting them back in balance, not having them take overboard so we don't create all the illnesses and aging. And also it's anti-inflammatory and helps our insulin. So if someone has this belly fat that that has to do with insulin resistance, then maybe having more of a fast, again, not overdoing it though, can help make your brain and your cells more insulin sensitive. And then it can get rid of that visceral, that inflammatory belly fat, for example. So there's lots of benefits and they all go hand in hand. Another thing that is really important is exercise. And like I said before, exercise actually helps to get you into that ketogenic state faster, that autophagy, that cellular cleanup. If your body is, if you're doing a hardcore exercise, but even if you're just gently moving, any time of that, it gets your body quicker into that cellular cleaning up and renewal state. It also has been shown to be anti-inflammatory. It helps to increase brain health, bone density. If you're exercising earlier in the day, it helps to support that cortisol, that stress curve, because actually when you're exercising, that cortisol goes up, which is a good thing if you're if it's not too late in the day, and also if you're not currently full with food. So you want to ideally do it, best thing is to do it first thing in the morning when you're fasted, but also later is fine. It's really good for your body to do exercise, as long as you don't overdo it. Because if you overdo it, if you're one of the people that think the more the better, I'll exercise every day at a high intensity, then you might start to produce too much cortisol, which is the body thinks it's running away from a tiger, not just once, but all the time. So again, it's the balance is key. You want to move every day. You want to also exercise every day or most days, but you don't want to do really high intensity exercise every day, because that then becomes a stress on the body. And again, it depends a little bit on your health, on your hormones, and then you can see if you're currently overdoing it or not. Okay, we've talked about this. Next thing, we've talked a little bit about that circadian rhythm. Just want to put another emphasis on that now. So the circadian rhythm is this thing with the cortisol curve that we said before. You want to have a good spike of cortisol first thing in the morning, and you want it to taper off so that you can sleep at night. And it actually does the thing with the Caesar platter with melatonin, which is on the opposite side. You want melatonin to drop first thing in the morning so that you're awake, and then you want melatonin to come up so that you can sleep. Now, people often have this all the wrong way around. Their cortisol stays up, the melatonin doesn't come up, or it stays too high in the morning, and then it causes problems with their whole body. It causes inflammation. It causes cholesterol levels to go up. It causes them to if they can't sleep at night, then the next day their body, their brain is not insulin sensitive, and it starts to get cravings. Actually, the body becomes inflamed the next day if you haven't had enough sleep. There's all these things that, again, become this whole cycle, vicious cycle. So we want to make sure we have a really nice circadian rhythm. So what does that look like, and how can we support it? First thing in the morning, we want to get light. So we just want to basically rethink, how did we evolve? We would get up in the morning and be exposed to light into our eyes. So first thing in the morning, don't wear your sunglasses, get some sunlight into your eyes so your brain gets the signal that it's time to wake up. Cortisol, the melatonin has to go down. And then in the evening, you want the opposite. You want no blue light. You want it to be softer light, as if it would normally be in nature. And that allows the body to then start to produce melatonin. It does have slightly difference for different types of people. So some people are more morning types, some are later in the day. However, it's still, they realize that it's just a few hours, and actually it's still, and it does move a little bit, but you still want to do the same strategies. If you're a later riser, still do the same thing. Get out of bed and get sunlight. And then at night, stop the exposure of the blue light screens. Maybe wear some blue light blocking glasses if you have to work late. But try and get a really nice rhythm. It's important for your complete system. Okay, so why is sleep so important? I already took some of it away. I'm just going to go through a few more things. So other than it helping your you not have cravings the next day, and your body staying insulin sensitive, so you don't get turn into a problem with diabetes and cardiovascular problems, but also that belly fat. There's other things that are important. Why sleep is important. One of it is called the lymphatic system. It's basically like it's a drainage system in our brain. And what research shows is that it only really turns on during deep sleep. So we all have little protein plaques in the brain, and only if they start to accumulate and become too much, it turns into a problem with Alzheimer's, for example. There's other factors involved for Alzheimer's too, but they found that this is a big part of it. And so every time at night when we go into deep sleep mode, then our brain gets flushed with toxins. Everything gets taken out, anything that shouldn't be there. It calms our immune system down. It helps our memory and cognition. It makes the memory from the days, it puts it into the right parts of the brain so we can remember it after. And that only happens during deep sleep. So it's kind of important. And then also the other things that I said before, the metabolism, weight control, and things like that. But what I found so interesting is that sleep thing, because oftentimes people, when they have Alzheimer's, or when they're worried about Alzheimer's, they think of all the other things, but sleep is often not looked at. And it's a really important thing for our brain, but also for our cravings and metabolism. Let me just 1 second. Turn. That's better. Okay, so wait, how is this working now? There we go. Sorry. Oh yeah, and we want to have a minimum of 7 to 9 hours, not a minimum, a roughly average 7 to 9 hours sleep, because less is usually not enough. There's a few people that have a genetic mutation where they can get away with less sleep and potentially not have all these problems. But there are not many, and more than 9 hours has actually been shown to be problematic as well, unless you sometimes need it, obviously. But on a regular basis, if you constantly have to sleep more than 9 hours, you need to think, maybe there's something wrong in my body. Why is my body needing that much rest? And fix that. Okay. Another important thing, and this might not be as scientific as you like, but it's actually a big importance, is to think about it as, how can I best nourish my body, mind, and soul? Oh, I can see Emma again. Hi, the one person in the video. So rather than thinking, what do I need to take out and what do I need to think of and be all stressed about it, it's actually really important to just think, okay, how can I nourish myself? But not just my body, but also my mind and soul. because there's also something called orthorexia, where people become so stressed and obsessed with their diet that that becomes a problem. So it's not about doing everything 100% and stressing about it. It's actually also about, where do I have it here? The 80-20 rule. It's okay to do whatever you feel like doing sometimes. It's okay to have do things that are maybe not ideal, as long as you're being relaxed, and as long as you're nourishing yourself. And sometimes nourishing yourself means to have that extra glass of red wine if that makes you more relaxed the next day, or have more social connectedness. Because, for example, being socially connected, to having a purpose in life, has been shown to also lower inflammation, lower free radical damage. So there's all these other factors that are also important, but I won't go into detail today with them. One thing, yeah, we also won't go into detail here with toxins from makeup and products like that, because I know we're taking a lot of your time tonight. Sunshine importance, oxytocin release with cuddles and other things, potentially with people. All these things are part of a healthy life and part of what functional medicine looks at. So we're almost done. I know it's taking quite a long time, so I hope you're still all with me. So what is precision health? So rather than just saying, okay, you need to eat some more greens, as we all know, and we should eat some more vegetables, we actually, sorry, there's some helicopter. Precision health, how we practice it and how we're going to be doing it with Barrecore, is that we actually think we need to test it. So you know where you are, rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to just now only eat blueberries and only do this. And maybe you're actually doing it right, naturally, intuitively, because like I said, it's the 80-20 rule. We don't usually have to be too strict about things. We do need to nourish ourselves, our body, our soul. So everything might be totally fine. However, there's some certain tools that we can use to see where we're currently standing. For example, there's this really cool new brain scan tool. They're not really here yet, but they're in America, and you can track whether your brain is currently functioning well, or you can do all these MRIs for your heart health or DNA testing. However, they're all maybe a little bit out there, but you can do things on a day-to-day basis. So for example, you can test your ketones in that's the device that I was talking about before. You get this little finger prick, and then you can see if you're currently in a ketosis, or if you need to maybe cut your carbs a little more. And you can also do the same thing with blood sugar to see if you're getting blood sugar spikes right after a meal. And if you are, then maybe that kind of food is just a little bit too much sugar for you, because we don't want these spikes. But maybe it's fine, because maybe your body is completely metabolically flexible, sensitive to the sugars, and the carbs you were eating went straight into your cells. So it's good to test rather than just say, okay, now I'm going to restrict myself and do all these things. There's also some other great tools to track your health day to day. For example, I like the Aura Ring. I'm not selling anything here, by the way. I've got nothing to do with them. And there are other tools as well. There are all these devices where you can track your sleep and your heart rate at night, for example. You can see if your heart rate is slowing down at night, means that you're being restful, that your body can recover. It can test whether you're getting into that deep sleep enough where your brain is flushing out toxins. You can do all these things, and then you can say, actually, last night I ate this meal at 9 p.m. and then my sleep was crap. And you can start to realize what works for you. And you can say, well, actually, if I do this, I'm totally fine. I'm really relaxed. Maybe I should do this more often. Or if I do this certain thing, if I have this extra glass of wine, then my heart rate doesn't go down at night. Maybe that's not good for me. So then you can make more educated choices. And then the second thing is a health check from a functional medicine perspective. And we'll go into detail there a little bit here. And that's what we'll be doing with Barrecore as well. Where you can look at all these things that we talked about before, all these different cogwheels, the inflammation, liver health, how are your hormones, how is your cortisol, that stress hormone rhythm, some of the most important nutrients and minerals. We look at all these things, and then rather than just saying, you maybe have gone to the doctor and they said, no, it's all fine, and then 10 years down the line you have a problem, with functional medicine, we say, well, actually, there's a big range between being optimal, where everything works really well, or where it already starts to build up sludge. Because the reference ranges that the doctors use normally, the labs, they are from an average of the population. They're not from optimally healthy people. So within functional medicine, we would, let's say you had an annual checkup with your doctor and they said, you're fine. Maybe your cholesterol's a little high, but do this, cut out some of your eggs, whatever. You would send them to me. And then I would say, okay, these are actually not quite optimal anymore. These are, and what does that mean? And how can you modify your diet, lifestyle, maybe some supplements to support it and get it back into the optimal ranges, again, with the 80-20 rule, unless you have a real health condition. And then there's some more specialized functional medicine add-ons testing that most normal doctors might not do, or labs. So for example, you can test food intolerances. IgG, most people know the antibodies nowadays with COVID. So you can test for antibodies in your body against foods. You can test for heavy metals. You can test for infections in your gut and your stool. You can see how well your body is breaking down hormones, how your brain is making the serotonin, for example, how much free radical damage is. There's all these extra add-ons, but they're if someone has a health condition that they want to tackle, then those might be important. But if someone just wants to optimize their health, they might not be necessary. Then you can just do a normal health check and just look at it from a different perspective. Okay, so that's what I said. And sometimes there's targeted supplement support, or usually just to get it back into the optimal ranges. Okay, so I'll give you guys a tiny little break. Send me some emails if you have questions. I'll try and go through them. And I'll also, after the little break, I would say we do, how long do you want? I can only see Emma. Do you want 2 minutes? 5 minutes break? 2 minutes. We'll do a 2-minute break. In those 2 minutes, go and send me some questions that you have. Wait, where's the email again? Precision. Oh, we don't have many slides left. There's the email. You can send me an email to precisionhealth@barrecore.co.uk or barrecore.com. It's both actually. This apparently both works. And then in 2 minutes, we'll get back and we'll talk about questions and also how Barrecore actually, how you can book this, what you can do with functional medicine at Barrecore now.